change. This wasn't the topic that I had originally planned to present. But just last night after the presentation, and because of all the questions I received yesterday, I decided, it would be better for me to finish it up with this particular topic, because this forms the foundation of health, really. If you have heard the saying that health begins from the gut, it is actually not just a mere saying. It is not just a cliche. It is actually fact. It is supported by science that health begins from the gut. Even if you look at it from the surface, superficially, just think about it. If you don't eat, what will happen? Let's pretend you decide, I'm not going to eat for 3 months. What's going to happen? Or if you're not going to drink, you decide, I'm not going to drink any water for a few weeks, what will happen? So everything that has something to do with health, whether you're eating, whether you're drinking, whether you're taking medication, whether you're drinking a soup or tea or whatever you're doing to help your body, to help build your body or to help heal your body, has to go through the gut. And so, literally speaking, even from a superficial analysis, health actually does begin from the gut. But beyond that, we are going to go into some things that a lot of us sort of have not paid attention to. And so I decided to present this so that this would actually be the other end of the book that we started opening from Wednesday evening. So that if you don't hear anything at all, these presentations, and especially the one we had yesterday and today, will be a motivating factor for you young people not to take your health for granted. And it will also be a motivating factor for you so that when you hear anything about good living or eating healthy, you will not say or you will not think that that is just for the adults, for your moms and your dads and for your grandparents. So we're going to talk about the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome. You will not believe how many patients I see with gut problems. IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. I see Crohn's disease. I see ulcerative colitis. I see all kinds of gut problems. But I am not a gastroenterologist. I am not. But the sad part is that most of these patients that I see who come with IBS, with ulcerative colitis, and with Crohn's disease, these are patients who have seen gastroenterologists for years. They've been treated with all kinds of medications, all kinds of biologics, all kinds of immunosuppressants, and yet the problems don't go away. The solution, or if you like, the antithesis, the prevention of some of these diseases is just as simple as taking good care of your gut microbiome. And so a lot of these patients, when I see them or when they come to my clinic, we go through a process, a period of rebuilding the gut microbiome. And most of the time, when we have done that, after we have been able to do that, the diseases go into what is called remission. Medicine doesn't really like to talk about cures per se. Medicine is very shy of those words of cure. And so instead of using the word cure, they will say remission. I have, if you come to my office manager, one who manages my office, she has given me permission to talk about it, so I can freely talk about it. She has Crohn's disease. And she had Crohn's disease for so many years before she came to us. And then that was when I was a partner in another practice. That's where she came to before. And then when I set up my own practice, she became my office manager. For so many years, she had Crohn's disease. And as usual, the treatment was actually killing her. She was dying of the treatment because she had to go for all these infusions every month. She had to go for these infusions, and the effects of the infusions was worse than the symptoms of the disease. But now, if she doesn't tell you, you will never know. The disease is gone. By all accounts, repeat colonoscopies have revealed that her gut is clean. So when I say that the gut microbiome is the hidden foundation of good health, it is fact, and it is supported by science. And so as young people, I want us to conclude this week, these 3 days, with this topic so that you will be able to take it seriously and build your gut microbiome or take good care of your gut microbiome. So the gut microbiome, there are trillions of organisms that live in our digestive system. You see the word trillions. In fact, the research says that there are about 100 trillion bacteria living in our gut. 100 trillion. Think about it. That same research, the Human Genome Project and all kinds of other projects that they have conducted, estimates that there are about 10 trillion cells of human cells compared to 100 trillion bacteria cells. So it means that we are outnumbered by bacteria 10 to 1. For every 1 human cell, there are 10 bacteria cells. So it could actually be fair to say that we are more bacteria than human cells. That's very, very interesting. But I think that's a topic for another day. So the point is, if you have 100 trillion bacteria living in you, they definitely must have a big impact on your health. All right, now let's look at the composition of the gut microbiome. What is it made of? The 100 trillion, what is in there? They are actually divided into 2 major predominant phyla. When we say phyla, we're talking about huge families. So 2 major families, and then under these families, we have other subfamilies and subfamilies and subfamilies. And the 2 major ones are the Firmicutes family and the Bacteroides family. These are the 2 major ones. There is Proteobacteria also, but the 2 major ones that determine our health are the Firmicutes and Bacteroides. And they form a synergism. That is, they work together. The major families, we have all of these. Every individual has a combination of all these phyla, the Firmicutes, Bacteroides, or Proteobacteria. We have them as a mixture. But one of them always dominates. So there are those who have Firmicutes dominant gut bacteria, and then there are those who have Bacteroides dominant gut bacteria. The most dominant bacteria group that you have will determine your health. The Firmicutes dominant bacteria is the type of bacteria that is found in the guts of indigenous populations, American Indians, Native Africans, Native Asians, people who eat like native original diet, people who are not yet infected, if you like, with the not American diet, the standard American diet of processed food, high fat and high animal protein. So any population you can think of around the world that eats as close to the earth as possible. That is, they eat fruits like the fruits grew on the tree. They eat more vegetables, they eat more whole grains, and they eat less processed food, less fats, less sugars, less chemicals. They tend to have Firmicutes dominant gut bacteria. They have some Bacteroides, but the dominant ones are always Firmicutes. And then populations like the populations we see here in North America, and in Asia, in Europe, in the so-called developed or advanced countries where there is so much industrialization, where people rely and depend on fast foods and on eating out and on processed foods, those populations have Bacteroides dominant gut bacteria. So I think you see there's a picture that is painting here. The Firmicutes dominant, they love plant food. They love plants. They love fiber. And the Bacteroides dominant, they love fats. They love flesh. They love sugar. And they love all these processed chemicals and additives. So even though this is just the first few slides, but I'm sure if you're listening to me and you're paying attention, already you can begin to paint a picture of the type of bacteria family you have in your gut. So, where do these bacteria come from? Where do they come from? Because every individual has them in your gut, whether you like it or not. They start developing around birth. The first few gut bacteria that we get it in the amniotic fluid. As we are there, we swallowed some things. We swallow some of the fluid. And especially during childbirth, when the child is coming out of the mother, that's when we get our first inoculation of gut bacteria from the nose, the mouth, and the birth fluid. That is where we get our first gut bacteria from. And so every child gets their mother's gut bacteria. That's the first one they get. If you remember yesterday, when we were talking about epigenetics, we talked about epigenetic stamps or epigenetic links that we inherit from our parents. The gut bacteria is not directly epigenetic, but it is one of the things we get from our mothers. So if a mother has poor or bad gut bacteria, the child is also going to get that. So number two, after the child is born, breast milk also contains about 600 different species of bacteria. 600 species. And so the child gets some of the bacteria directly from the birth canal and then get an additional set of bacteria from the breast milk. And so if you're listening to me and you are a parent, you are a young adult, you are listening to me, please, 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 do not fall victim. Do not fall victim to the commercialization, to the capitalistic tendency, capitalism of the society we live in, where we think that formula feeding our children is the better way to go. Don't fall for that unless absolutely necessary. Unless you have tried everything and you can't get breast milk, then by all means the child has to eat something. Then you can give the child formula. But if you are able to produce breast milk, there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't feed your child with breast milk, because the first breast milk that the child gets contains 600 different species of bacteria. And so as the child eats the breast milk, as they drink the milk, until they are weaned off, they are getting inoculated, and they are getting like seeds that are being planted. It's a garden inside the gut of the baby. And then they develop these healthy gut bacteria. And then that's not all. The breast milk, in addition to containing 600 species of bacteria, also contains certain sugars called oligosaccharides. And these oligosaccharides, the baby cannot digest them, but they serve as food for the 600 species of bacteria. Who said that we are not fearfully and wonderfully made? So that is where the initial bacteria begin. That's where they start from. And then they develop, and around age 3, they begin to stabilize. But throughout our life, from age 3 all the way to our death, the bacteria, they change, they evolve, they change, and then there are modifications going on in and out. And that modification or the changing is what is going to determine our health status. And of course, that is influenced by these factors: our diet, our environment, our genetics, medications that we take, and different things, unique microbial fingerprint. This is the epigenetic imprint that we get from our mothers. And no two microbiomes are identical. What it means is that my microbiome, what I have in here, is different from my brother, Dr. Owusu's gut microbiome. No two microbiome is identical. It's unbelievable. It's as if we have a second set of fingerprints in our gut. Everybody's gut microbiome is, because our lives are different, our mothers are different, and so our exposure to the birth canal was different. Before I move on, what this means is that if a child is born through C-section, usually that child is already starting with a little bit deficit as far as gut microbiome is concerned. And if on top of that, the child is born through a C-section and then the child doesn't get breastfed, that is a double whammy. And a lot of those children, they grow up with a lot of allergies, a lot of immune dysregulations, asthma, atopic dermatitis, different types of immune problems because of the gut microbiome. All right, so let's go on now. Right, we already answered this question. So there are two, like I said, 100 trillion of them, and the Firmicutes dominant, Native Africans, Native Amerindians, Bacteroides dominant, North Americans, Western Europeans, because of the type of food we eat. So, okay, now that we know of this, now let's go into why am I saying that the gut microbiome is the foundation of good health? Why is that? Because the bacteria, they function, they support digestion. They support digestion. They break down complex carbohydrates and fiber. And they help us to extract nutrients which our bodies can't process alone. So right there, here we see that if your gut microbiome is the wrong type, one, your digestion will be affected. So I also see a lot of people with a lot of digestive problems. And you know, gastroenterology doesn't have a lot of solutions at all. It doesn't have a lot of tools for gut problems. When you think about it, gastroenterology, it's the tools that gastroenterology has is so much woefully inadequate to address gastrointestinal problems. So we have a lot of people who have unexplained abdominal pain as soon as they eat. serious excruciating pain begin. And that you do endoscopy, you do colonoscopy, you do all the scopes, the MRI, CAT scan, you do all the radiological studies available, and you will not find anything. You do the labs, the CBC, the CMPs, the liver, the kidney function, everything is unremarkable. Like we say in medicine, everything is clean. And yet when they eat, serious abdominal pain. I had one business executive who came to see me from Manhattan. For 2 years, this is a business executive. And you know, these people, they fly out for meetings here and there. For 2 years, he could not travel for more than 10, 15 minutes at a time because he has such a serious abdominal problem with diarrhea that if he sits, like drives for more than 20 minutes, he has to look for a bathroom because the pain was so excruciating that he had to look for a bathroom. And as you know, he's an executive, business executive in Manhattan. He has all the money to see the best specialists in the world. Nothing could help him. He came in, we reset his gut bacteria, we fixed his digestion, and he's back. After 2 years of becoming a prisoner, he's back minding his business, flying to Europe and doing his business as if nothing happened before. So this thing that we are talking about is a very serious issue. So if your gut microbiome is out of balance, you tend to have digestive problems, abdominal pain, diarrhea, abdominal distress, what we refer to as dyspepsia. It's as if you don't know how to describe the feeling. You don't feel fine. You are congested, as if the food is sitting there forever. You don't feel the food clearing. You eat food, and then about 2 days time, you still feel as if the food you ate 2 days ago is still sitting there, as if something is sitting in your stomach. One of the major reasons is because your gut microbiome is not the right kind. So you're not digesting or breaking down your food. And because that is happening also, you are not getting nutrient extraction to capacity. The nutrients that you're supposed to get from your food, you're not getting it because you don't have the requisite microbiome. You don't have the right kind of bacteria to do that. So that is the first thing they do. They participate in digestion. I didn't put everything here as far as digestion is concerned because of time. But one very, very important thing that they do is that they influence, there are certain cells within our gut called the goblet cells. And these goblet cells, they synthesize or they secrete mucus. In Twi, we call it amamine. They secrete this mucus, and that mucus serves as a coat within our gut, within our intestines. It protects our gut from destruction, from acid, and from digestive juices and enzymes. If your gut microbiome is not exactly where it should be, if it is not balanced, you don't make enough mucus. And so your gut tends to be dry. And a dry gut will produce constipation, and a dry gut will produce cracks, will produce inflammation. And an inflamed gut will lead to abdominal pain. An inflamed gut will lead to what is referred commonly as leaky gut or intestinal permeability syndrome. So even though we are talking about simple bacteria, they do things that we don't know they're doing. They work in the background and they keep us healthy. And that is why I call this lesson the foundation of good health. Number two, they synthesize vitamins. They produce vitamin K, B1, B9, and B12. B12, there are certain bacteria that produce it. Even though humans don't make enough, we don't make enough of it at all. So we cannot rely on it. But there is evidence that we make a little bit of it. But the evidence they found was that the little bit of B12 that we make is found, it's made at the end where they don't get absorbed. But they help us absorb the B12 that we get from our food. Number three, immune training. The gut microbiome, they educate our immune system from birth. There is something in immunology called distinction of self from non-self. The ability for your body to know that this is me and this or that is an enemy. Where your body is able to tell the difference between a bacteria that is an enemy and, excuse me, and my own human cells, so that it does not attack itself. And when that fails, when that distinction between self and non-self fails or breaks down, that is when we develop autoimmune disease, which means your body begins to attack itself. And there is ample evidence. There's so much research. Like I always say, if anybody is interested in the research, I can give you tons of them. There is a lot of evidence that shows that imbalanced gut microbiome, what is referred to as dysbiosis, is one of the things that causes autoimmune disease. Because if you don't have the good balance of gut microbiome, then your gut, the immune system doesn't get properly trained. Your immune system doesn't get trained. And if it doesn't get trained, then it mistakes. It doesn't even know who is the enemy and who is not. And eventually, autoimmunity happens because it attacks self, it attacks the enemy, it attacks anything it sees, it attacks. And there is research to support that 70% of our immune cells live in the gut. It's unbelievable. And this is why I say that the gut microbiome is the foundation of good health. We have talked about digestion, we have talked about extraction of nutrients, we have talked about synthesis of vitamins, and I didn't add it here. Remember that yesterday I talked about the 8 essential amino acids that we cannot make, that we eat from outside. There are 12 amino acids that we can make, and the gut microbiome helps in the synthesis of these amino acids. So they do things for us. In addition to that, they also educate our immune system, and 70% of the immune cells are not in the blood. All the neutrophils and the lymphocytes and all those eosinophils and monocytes that circulate in our blood, which we know of. Think of those and imagine that 70% of our immune cells actually live in our gut. It makes sense. Why? Because our gut is the barrier between the internal part of our body, between our liver, our lungs, our heart, and the exterior. Things that will gain access to our body, with the exception of intentionally injecting something into you like IVs or medications. Everything else has to go through the mouth, and the gut is the barrier. So the gut has to have a very strong immune system to be able to protect us from invaders coming from outside. And then number 4, so this immune training, this is just to train the body so that it doesn't attack itself. But number 4, where we have pathogen defense. The pathogen defense is that these beneficial bacteria, they compete with harmful ones, and therefore they create protective barriers against invading pathogens. What it means is that those bacteria, in addition to all the things that they do, they also fight other bacteria that is coming from outside. And that is why we don't get sick so quickly. If you had eyes, like microscope or like an electron microscope, that could see how many bacteria and how many viruses and how many pathogens in the environment we swallow every day, you will be amazed. Every day, as we breathe, as we talk, as we drink, as we eat, we are swallowing millions of pathogens, bacteria, and the rest. But we don't get sick every day because the gut bacteria that live here, they fight and they defend us. And that is why young people should understand this and take it seriously. Okay. Now there's something very, very important called the gut-brain axis. Remember the first day on Wednesday when we were talking about depression and we were talking about the hits. the Haight theory of depression, we talked about certain things that can be prevented and that can be avoided. And there I talked about the fact that serotonin and all those things, chemicals, I talked about serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, and GABA, all these chemicals that keep us sane, that keep our mood stabilized, are made, synthesized in the gut. That is what the gut-brain axis is talking about. So the gut, the microbiome, the bacteria that live in our gut, they produce neurotransmitters or chemicals and certain byproducts called metabolites. And then they travel via the vagus nerve to the brain. So the gut sends messages to the brain. And then the brain also processes these signals and then sends hormones and other electrical, when he says neural messages, talking about nervous messages, messages through our electrical conduction systems called the neurons and the nerves. It goes through it and sends it back to the gut. And so now, with this understanding, scientists are beginning to call the gut microbiome the second brain, because the gut microbiome is so powerful that it can actually dictate what the brain should produce. For a long time, we have thought that the brain is the master control organ. It tells the body how to behave. It tells the body what to produce, what not to produce. But now we know that the gut microbiome is able to produce these powerful signals that actually influence the brain's chemical and hormone production. And so this communication impacts our anxiety, our stress, and our depression. And so if you really, really, really want to take control of those 10 hits for depression prevention that we talked about on Wednesday, and you want to take control of your mood as far as anxiety, stress, and depression is concerned, you have to absolutely take control and take care of your gut microbiome, because over 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. So what is serotonin? Serotonin is a chemical which stabilizes our mood. So when somebody is depressed, guess what medication they get? SSRI. Most of, not all of them, but most of the most popular antidepressants that are sold on the market are all SSRIs. So SSRI is serotonin specific reuptake inhibitors. What they do is that they artificially raise the level of serotonin in your blood so that your mood will always be high and it will keep you from being depressed. But the gut microbiome makes up 90% of them. We have a serotonin factory in our gut. And if all of us were taking good care of it, the depression and anxiety and the stress that we destroy our lives will be less than they are now. So that is another big thing that the gut microbiome does, the gut-brain axis. All right. Now let's look at some chronic diseases that are associated with the gut microbiome. We are going to go into a little bit detail now. You see, the reason why I say that the gut microbiome is the foundations of health. Obesity, if you look here, obesity, you see the association. Obesity, inflammatory diseases, bowel diseases, I talked about that. Those are the Crohn's disease and the ulcerative colitis. Type 2 diabetes, the gut microbiome is involved in insulin resistance and all of that. Cardiovascular diseases, autoimmune diseases. We've talked about all these already. We'll go into a few details right now, and then we will be done. So this is the microbiome as a factory, as a chemical factory. Look here. I'm just going to quiz you a little bit. If you're paying attention, you can type it in the chat. Look at this type of dye. Going back to the initial, what I was talking about in the beginning. the Firmicutes dominant gut bacteria and the Bacteroides dominant gut bacteria. If you see this type of diet, what type of bacteria dominance would you think it is? For somebody who eats this way, which phyla or which group of bacteria do you think will dominate in the gut? Think about that. If you eat like this, then you are developing a certain type of bacteria. It is like seeds that you're sowing, because remember, there is a type of bacteria that love flesh, they love fat, they love sugar, they love processed food. And that is what we are looking at here. Those are the Bacteroides dominant type of bacteria. And the research here, look at here, it's talked about, it says gut flora dependent metabolism of dietary PC and atherosclerosis. This is just an example. This research was conducted by Cleveland Clinic scientists. They were the first scientists who discovered this particular, because they care about the heart. Cleveland Clinic is a heart specialist hospital. They do excellent work with heart. So they do a lot of research. And so when you eat like this, then you grow that type of bacteria in the gut flora, you grow it in your gut. And then that gut bacteria, they convert certain chemicals in these foods into a chemical called TMA. The TMA is trimethylamines. And then this chemical is a very toxic chemical. So the body tries to neutralize it, and therefore it goes to the liver, and the liver converts the TMA to TMAO. There. So from TMA, it becomes TMAO. And this TMAO is a very toxic compound that can do this to your body. Atherosclerosis, heart attack, stroke, death. So just let's think about it. What you are eating, basically it means what you are eating is producing a chemical which can cause all these. If anybody told you that, you would be very, very angry with them. If somebody came in and they saw you eating something and they said, oh, what you're eating is can cause you heart attack, can cause stroke, and it can kill you, you will really be angry, because you think, what are you talking about? This is healthy food because it tastes good. Or I need my protein, I need my fat. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you can't eat any animal product or you can't eat any animal protein or animal fat. But the research says people whose diet predominantly consists of these types of things, animal-based foods and fats and processed food, they have a Bacteroides dominant gut bacteria, and it produces these toxins. Now, let me pause here for a second and then say something here. This was research conducted by Cleveland Clinic scientists. All they care about is the heart. And so they focused on the heart-specific effects of bad gut bacteria. But if you go and you look at other systems, the gastroenterology, you look at the nervous system, and you look at all the other systems, you will see something similar. In the gut, the of atherosclerosis, heart attack, stroke, and death is in the gut. You have inflammation, you have irritable bowel syndrome, you have ulcerative colitis, you have all different types of colitis or inflammation of the gut. If you come into the liver, you have different types of things going on. You have fatty liver disease. You have what is called non-alcoholic steatohepatitis or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. If you look at the immune system, you have all kinds of things. If you go into the nervous system and you go to the brain, you have inflammation, you have plaques developing, which can help them deal with Alzheimer's and a lot of these neurodegenerative diseases. All of them have the gut microbiome in common. That's not the only cause of these things, but they are a big contributing factor. So your gut microbiome is a chemical factory. So this is the Bacteroides dominant gut. All right, now let's look at the other side of the coin and see what a typical Firmicutes dominant bacteria would do. Uh-oh, excuse me. Okay. Okay. So this is a typical Firmicutes dominant bacteria gut. So anybody who doesn't eat like the North American, North European diet, but who eats like a native African or native Indian or native South Asian, people who eat real food, they eat more whole grains, they eat fruits, they eat vegetables. People who eat that way, they produce Firmicutes type of bacteria. And those bacteria, they consume the fiber in the plant foods. There are different types of fiber in there. And each fiber feeds a different type of bacteria. And each type of bacteria produces a different type of chemical. So if you look here, the good healthy bacteria, the Firmicutes dominant bacteria, they produce what is known as short chain fatty acids. Here, short chain fatty acids. And those short chain fatty acids are what we call acetate, propionate, and butyrate. What do they do? You look here, look at the lungs. They decrease airway epithelial inflammation. So basically, they protect your lungs from inflammation, from all the upper respiratory infection, from lung diseases, and from all of that, just by eating a diet that favors the production of Firmicutes bacteria. You are actually protecting your airway and your lungs. The pancreas, these same short chain fatty acids helps with pancreas insulin secretion. So if you're secreting insulin, what happens? It means you are not going to, your body has enough insulin to metabolize your glucose. Look, white adipose tissue goes down. And this is the type of tissue. The white is the one that deposits inside our liver, inside our muscles, the one that causes obesity and that causes fatty liver disease. Just by eating the right kind of food and developing the right kind of gut microbiome or gut bacteria, you are preventing that. Bone marrow, hematopoiesis happens. What we saw is that just by getting these acetate, propionate, and butyrate, the short chain fatty acids, they stimulate the production of blood cells. Your blood cell production become more efficient. Immune cells, the ones that cause inflammation, the neutrophils, the mast cells, the Tregs, the dendritic cells, eosinophils, those that are related to inflammation, they go down. So it increases the productions of the ones that do not trigger inflammation, and then they suppress the ones that trigger inflammation. It's amazing. The brain, they cause what is called neurogenesis. Remember, I talked about something called neuroplasticity when I was talking about depression, where your brain is able to adapt to situations, where your brain becomes so efficient and becomes so master at adapting to situations. Producing short chain fatty acids will help. It will also help you be more satisfied. So you have a feeling of satiety. You feel full when you eat. And how does that happen? That happens through the gut-brain connection that we talked about. Muscles, it helps the development of muscle. It helps energy production. Liver, insulin sensitivity in the liver so that you don't have liver, fatty liver disease, and your liver is able to process glucose and convert glucose into glycogen for storage. And then the nervous system, it helps your gut to move and helps it to secrete well. Now let's look here a little bit and see some specifics. There are 3 short chain fatty acids. There is the acetate, the propionate, and the butyrate. Now, if you look here, you see the acetate and propionate, what do? They help the body to release what is called peptide Y and glucagon-like peptides 1. Do you know what glucagon-like peptide 1 is? Glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, is like the new kid on the block now. The effect of this chemical is to help you feel full, you feel satisfied, and it helps your intestines to move well, and then it helps you to lose weight. There are some medications, a family of medications that they have tried to synthesize called GLP-1 agonist. Do you know which medications these are? If you sit in front of a TV and you watch the news, I'm sure you may have heard about these GLP-1. Everybody wants them. They are the Ozempics and what do you call it? Ozempics, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and all those medications that are used for weight loss now and for diabetes. Everybody is going after. There are some doctors right now who are actually setting up, believe it or not, they are setting up Ozempic clinics. Now, all they do in those clinics is to prescribe Ozempic for weight loss. But look here, by getting the right kind of gut microbiome, and which produces short-chain fatty acids, acetate and propionate, you are actually going to produce the GLP-1 naturally. You don't need an Ozempic to do that. Your body can make the GLP-1. The reason why a lot of people are not making GLP-1 and they need synthetic GLP-1, and by the way, Google it and see. Those medications, they have some very horrible side effects. You see, every medication can have side effects. Don't get me wrong. If you need it, you need it. When you get to a point where you need those medications to save your life, by all means, you need it, you have to take it. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that if only we had the right kind of gut bacteria, a lot of these problems would be solved naturally. We wouldn't go to the route where we actually need a synthetic version that will cause all kinds of diseases, serious pancreatic failure, hepatitis, serious hepatitis, all kinds of diseases that can kill you, Meanwhile, these are things that we can make. So acetate and propionate, they actually help to produce GLP-1. Then propionate. This propionate can be converted to glucose by the gut, the intestine, the intestinal gluconeogenesis. It's a process where glucose is made. And when that happens, then you feel full or satiety. And this reduces your kidneys, your liver's need to produce insulin, called hepatic glucose formation. So your liver doesn't have to produce glucose anymore because you are making it in your gut.
You can watch Team USA go for
I don't know if I'm making sense. I want young people, this is for the young people, young adults and the youth. I really want you to understand why certain things are very important, why it is not just a matter of, oh, you have to eat a lot of plant food and fruits and vegetables, but I want you to understand exactly what you are getting and what you're doing, so that when you do it with your understanding, it will make more sense. The butyrate is anti-inflammatory and it inhibits histone deacetylase. Do you remember this name? Histone deacetylases. You remember we talked about it yesterday when I was talking about the epigenetics. I said there are two forms of epigenetic stamps. The first one is methylation, and then the second one is the histone modification, the one that silences good genes. Butyrate will prevent that from happening. Unbelievable. Just simple eating the right kind of food to get the right kind of gut bacteria is doing all of this. That is why I call this lesson the the hidden foundations of good health, because it is hidden and we are not talking about it enough. And a lot of people don't know about it. And so we are taking it for granted. All right. And then these short chain fatty acids here now, all of them, the acetate, the propionate, the butyrate, all of them act on the enteric nervous system, the nervous system within our gut, and stimulating motility or immune cells, and they reduce inflammation. They help the gut to move, and they help to reduce inflammation. And then all of these, the acetate, the propionate, the short chain fatty acids, they are in the blood, and then they go in there, and then they help in the lungs. We already looked at it here. And then the pancreas, fat tissue, bone, brain, liver, and muscle, they help reduce inflammation, help it with its metabolism. And so you see, which one do you want? Do you want the good microbiome chemical factory that we've looked at right now, or do you want the bad one? You want this one, which will produce TMA and TMAO, which can cause this and can cause inflammatory bowel disease and can cause all kinds of different diseases. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. So these are the factors that affect the microbiome, the health. The diet, we've already talked about it. The most important determinant is the diet, what you eat. Medications, antibiotics kill bacteria. There are some of us that take antibiotics for every reason, especially those of us from Ghana who can get it without prescription. We go to the African markets and we go buy Tupaye and we buy all these Tupayes and all these antibiotics. Be very careful how you take antibiotics only when necessary. And then there are a lot of us, a lot of the women who get recurrent UTIs, urinary tract infection. And one of the reasons why you get urinary tract infection needing multiple antibiotic therapies is because your gut microbiome is out of balance. For women, the rectum, where your colon ends, the gut begins from the mouth and it goes all the way, large intestines, and then to the rectum, and then to the anus. For women, the distance between the anus and the vagina is very, very short. There's a very short distance there, and therefore there is a cross communication between the anal bacteria. It sounds gross, but this is science. Between the gut bacteria that is found in your stool and the bacteria in your vaginal area. So if your gut bacteria is out of balance, or is the Bacteroides type, the bad type, then the bacteria in your vaginal area will also not be the right kind. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of women have multiple urinary tract infections and therefore have multiple antibiotic treatment. So if you've had antibiotic treatment for any reason, you have to, after that, go through a process to rebuild your gut microbiome, because antibiotics kill bacteria and you have to replenish, or you have to rebuild. The gut microbiome is also very, very affected by stress. If you're not sleeping well, and if you're stressed, and if you don't exercise, they are affected. So that is how, another way to maintain it. So you build them with your food. You prevent their destruction by being careful with the taking of medications and antibiotics. And there are a lot of medications. Antibiotics kill them directly. Medications like antacids, proton pump inhibitors, and a lot of people are on proton pump inhibitors, omeprazole, pantoprazole, and all those prazoles. They also disrupt the microbiome. And then the environment. If you live in a good, bad environment, they will all affect it. Okay, so what do we do? Right now, this is the research that is going on. This topic is so important. I put this slide in here for a reason. This topic is so important that now researchers are scrambling. They are looking for ways to develop targeted therapy, personalized nutrition diet plans based on individual microbiomes. There are a lot of tests to test the microbiome, and then there are targeted microbiomes for specific conditions. There is something called the fecal microbiome transplant. I bet a lot of you didn't know that. Something called fecal transplant, where they transplant feces. Basically, that is what it is. They take poop from one person and then they transplant it into another person, cure disease. It is actually a thing. In Ghana, in Tree, you kind of say, you have said you will be a TFI, you are Jenny TFI. Now, Yafuno, you're cleaning, Yahu Kakra. Now, you go bent to woman, you're south. Basically, that is what it is. And that is a procedure that costs thousands of dollars, but it has a fancy name. So most people don't even know what it is. Fecal transplant, they call it. It is basically a transfer of bacteria from somebody, a healthy individual's poop, to an unhealthy individual. And it has been used for weight loss. It has been used for serious gut infections, like infections with Clostridium difficile, C. diff infections, and then to treat chronic gut inflammation. So what we are talking about is actually real medicine that we get for cheap. So C. diff, like I was saying, this fecal transplant has cured over 90% of resistant C. difficile. So this C. diff bacteria is a very strong bacteria that no antibiotic can kill it. Most of the time, it is the infection that doctors fear the most inside the hospital. So in the, what is called nosocomial infection, type of infection that we get in hospital during treatment, the one that doctors fear the most is C. diff. Especially the patients who are very delicate, who have received multiple treatments, multiple antibiotics. When they get C. diff, the C. diff is usually resistant to all the antibiotics you can think of. And then after they use all the there are some antibiotics, there are some that are very, very powerful, like vancomycin. They use it and then they use all the IV antibiotics, but C. diff doesn't die. But guess what? Just mere transplant of good, healthy bacteria, usually from the Firmicutes family. And then there is a subfamily within that Firmicutes family called Prevotella, the Prevotella family. They just transplanting them has been shown to cure 90% of resistant C. diff. So when I say that the gut microbiome is the hidden foundation of good health, it is supported by science. Inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, and then here we're talking about Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Like I told you, my office manager has it. She had it, actually, let me say that. And now, by all accounts, we can say that she's cured because multiple repeat colonoscopies show that the gut is healthy and clean. All by fixing the gut microbiome. And then the metabolic health, we've already talked about it. It's our liver, sugar metabolism, and all that. So what we are doing today is that I want you to recognize the importance, want you to understand the importance of this gut microbiome and understand that it depends on what you eat. It's as simple as that. You can choose, it's like a farm. You can choose what you plant or what you grow in your garden. In the same way, you can choose what type of bacteria you are planting in your gut just by choosing the type of food you eat. If you are eating like an African or like an American Indian, like a native person who eats from the earth, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds, you are planting or you're growing Firmicutes, Prevotella dominant type of bacteria that produces health, that prevents disease, that helps treat disease, that helps reverses disease. And if you're eating like the standard American diet, eating your fats and your cheeses and your sodas and your chips and all those processed chemicals and additives and MSGs and all those, you are producing Bacteroides dominant gut bacteria, which produce inflammation. They produce TMAO, and they produce and 5-CG. They produce all the different types of toxins that cause inflammation and disease. So you have to recognize this, and that is why I chose to change this topic, today's topic, and present this, so that young people, you not look at eating the same way anymore. Start simple. Begin with dietary changes. Add a new plant food each week. If you are not used to doing it, these are just suggestions. You can do it whichever way you want, but at least try and say that, okay, and I'm going to change now. Now, each week I'm going to eat a new plant food, something I have never eaten before, and then be consistent. Be consistent. That health improves with sustained habits. You have to go, the results will take weeks or months. If you've been eating the wrong way for all your life, don't expect the change to happen in 3 days. It will take time. And then after a while, you get the right type of bacteria, and then you get all the health benefits. Okay? So, like I said, strategies. Diversify your diet. Eat different ones. Eat from the rainbow. Include some fermented foods. Fermented. Sometimes I hear some doctors say that, oh, fermented food is not good. You see, fermented. Who are you kidding me? Those are the foods that feed the gut microbiome. You need those. If it is too fermented until it becomes alcoholic or it smells of alcohol, of course, you don't want that. But there are, generally speaking, fermented foods will feed the gut microbiome. Prioritize your fiber, manage your stress. From the pen of inspiration, Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 21. It says, knowledge must be gained in regards to how we eat and drink and dress so as to preserve health. Sickness is caused by violating the laws of health. It is the result of violating nature's law. This is Counsels on Diet and Foods. And then page 34 says, God's people should place themselves where they will grow in grace, being sanctified body, soul, and spirit by the truth. When they break away from all health-destroying indulgences, they will have a clearer perception of what constitutes true godliness. And a wonderful change will be seen in the religious experience. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you your gut microbiome. I hope you take it seriously and build a good foundation for your health and the health of your future generations of unborn children. Thank you, and God bless you. If you have any questions, I'll take them now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boku-Gyamfi, for this wonderful presentation. At this juncture, we're going to open the floor for any questions and answers that you have for the presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Gyamfi. You can use the raise hand button to. Okay. All right. Mr. Okejesi, Okejesi can go.
Yeah, doctor, we thank you very much. But supposing we have eaten wrongly and we have got, say, colitis, what should we do?
Okay, so colitis is an inflammation of the colon. Basically, that's what it is. And as we saw in the short chain fatty acids are the major things that will heal the inflammation in the colon. Because within the colon, there are certain cells that is like a lining within the colon, or like a carpet within the colon. And those carpet is actually made up of cells which are called the colonocytes. And these colonocytes, guess what? They feed on short chain fatty acids, the same ones I mentioned, the butyrates, the propionates, and the acetates. These three short chain fatty acids serve as fuel, they serve as food, they serve as medicine for the cells within the colon called the colonocytes, which form the lining. And so when we say you have colitis, what we're actually saying is that those cells, those colonocytes, are the ones that are inflamed. And so all you have to do is to change your diet, switch your diet as far to plant as possible. And then gradually, as the gut microbiome, the bacteria changes. As the bacteria in your gut changes, and then you get the right kind of bacteria, which is the Firmicutes type of family of bacteria, they will start synthesizing the short-chain fatty acids, and the short-chain fatty acids will heal the colon, and the colitis will go away. Like I said, I've had a lot of patients with colitis, even Crohn's disease, which is like the worst of the worst of the worst, as far as gut inflammation is concerned, has been cured. My secretary or my office manager is there. And if anybody wants, you come to my office, I'll let you talk to her. She gave me the permission to talk about it. So that's what you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Doc, there's a question in the chat asking about if bad gut microbiome can cause ticks. Could you comment on that for us?
As far as ticks specifically is concerned, I'm not aware of any research that shows that gut microbiome can cause ticks. I know that poor gut microbiome can affect the gut-brain connection, can affect the nervous system, the brain, and how the brain works. But as far as ticks is concerned, no, I'm not. I don't know that there is any connection there.
Thank you. Okay. Another question in the chat. I think you commented on this earlier, but it says fermented food is fermented food good for the microbiome?
Yes, fermented food is good for the microbiome because you see, anytime you have fermented food, the process of fermentation actually breeds. It's like you're growing some bacteria, that some of the, and that is what we call probiotics. So probiotic is actually the good bacteria that is called probiotic. So anytime a food is fermented, it grows some of those good bacteria already, and that's why when you eat it, it will help. It can help you. So yes, and fermented foods are good for the microbiome.
Great, thank you. And then another question from Esther says, if these weight loss medications are not good, why are most healthcare professionals using them to lose weight?
This is a tough question. I wish I knew the answer. But the simple, what I can say simply is that, you see, medicine in general, the way medicine is practiced, it follows a certain direction. There is a formula. To be a good doctor, and that's what you train, you go to school, you have to memorize all these serious medication, all that. You have to be able to take a good history, listen to your patient, and be able to arrive at a good diagnosis, and then be able to match that diagnosis with a good medication prescription. That is the practice of good medicine. So when doctors do that, that is what they have been trained to do. And in the conventional medical practice sense, that is what they have. Those are the tools they have. Because like we've always been saying, doctors are not trained in how to treat disease and how to reverse disease with nutrition and food and nutritional factors. So most doctors don't know that. And it's a dangerous thing when you do what you don't know or what you don't understand. You know, it is not safe. So for safe medical practice, they have to stay within the bounds of their training. But then those who know or who have been trained to do that, they would treat obesity differently.
I think Agi Hope is trying to ask a question. I'll give the room for. Thank you, Doc, for that answer earlier. Agi Hope, you can go ahead. If not, we have some other interesting questions here in the chat. It says from Paul, please, I want to ask that can't the microbiomes related to like the fecal transplant that you mentioned earlier on, can these feces be cleaned up separately so that we can transfer the good part and not do the whole feces and transplant the whole entire feces? I guess that's the question.
Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't come across very well. They call it fecal transplant, but they don't transfer the entire feces. What they do is that they extract the feces from healthy individuals, and then they clean it up. They wash it up, and then they clean it up, before they transfer. So they transfer just the bacteria minus all the extracts. So, but the process is called fecal transplant, but it is not the entire feces that they transplant. In fact, there is now another version of this fecal transplant. I don't want to gross you out, but they actually extract it, they clean it up, and they encapsulate it. They put it in capsules, and then people swallow those capsules as fecal transplant. So yeah, that's a way to do it. But what I'm saying is that it's not cheap, because think about it. They take the feces, which is nasty, and then they clean it and make it presentable so that you can transplant it or you can swallow it in a capsule. And so the process of doing that is not cheap either. So when they are done, the outcome is expensive, but you can avoid all of that by growing your own Firmicutes dominant bacteria in your gut by just switching your diet, moving away from the standard American diet, the processed foods, the sugars into the predominantly plant diet, and then you have that without any problem. Okay.
I think one more question from the chat. It says, in relation to the antibiotics point, how do you feel about the dietary supplements like vitamin D3 and magnesium?
It depends on what you're using them for. I think I've talked a lot about vitamin D3. If you're a Black person, you're listening to me, most likely than not, you are vitamin D deficient or you're low in vitamin D. So every Black person, you need to have a program or a process where you take vitamin D supplements every day. I'm glad you asked this question, because it's not really related, but let me bring it in. Remember, I talked about the fact that we get our first bacteria from our mother's breast milk. It contains 500 different species of bacteria. And then in addition to that, it contains the oligosaccharides, those sugars that the bacteria needs to eat. Also, doctors will tell you that breast milk is low in vitamin D. And therefore, most of the time, they give the newborns vitamin D drops. Do you know why? The reason is because you cannot give what you don't have. And a lot of the mothers are deficient in vitamin D. So the breast milk naturally is low. And therefore, that also affects the immunity, the health of the bacteria. And so, yes, vitamin D is very, very important. And you can take those. And magnesium, yes, if you are, magnesium depends. It's not something we really need to take every day, but you have to make sure that you have enough magnesium, because we need magnesium for muscle relaxation, for nerve cells, for the brain, for the heart, and for all kinds of things.
For the interest of time, this will be our last question, Doc. It says,
Okay.
What is your take on probiotics and kombucha? And that's the last question.
Okay, so probiotics, yes, probiotics are good. It depends on what you do. And I remember I told you that when I get all these patients with GI problems, we have to rebuild their gut bacteria. One of the big we use is probiotics. We change the diet, we use probiotics, we support their digestion, we do all kinds of things. But probiotics are not all equal. But because remember, there are 100 trillion bacteria. So some are more important than others. And that is where a knowledgeable person, somebody who knows what they're doing, should come in and guide you with how you use the probiotics. But probiotics by themselves are good. Kombucha is basically, it's fermented green tea. That's what kombucha is. And basically it falls under the fermented foods, so it's good if you can use it.
All right, that brings us to the end of our Q&A session. I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Poku-Gyamfi, for this wonderful presentation. We have been blessed this past 3 days that you've led us through this wonderful health series. So I pray that may God continue to bless you and give you more insight and wisdom, that He will continue to impact us, that we may be able to take charge of our health and live healthily. Thank you so much. May God bless you. Also,
thank you, Dr. Usuf.
We're also thanking all our facilitators and the media team for carrying us through this past 3 days, through this health emphasis days that we've had. And may God bless you for all the sacrifice that you've done throughout these last couple of days. And then also to our wonderful NASDAQ East Zone leadership for giving us the opportunity to bring your way this health presentation. And then last but not least, to our wonderful audience for always showing up each and every day to be blessed by our amazing speaker, Dr. Opoku Gyamfi. And at this point, I want to leave the podium to Ms. Secretary to give us the.
Hi, Dr. Dan. Thank you. Happy Sabbath, everyone. I want to thank God for how far He has brought us. We do know so some of our parents are with us. So we want to thank you, a special thank you, and joining us, especially for tonight. I did see, a couple of names I hear and penny for power and then you joining us. I also saw Pastor Ivy joining us tonight. Thank you so much. Pastor Ben, you are with us, so thank you. Say also phobia waha joining us and you may say that when you must say and you may mutimi joining and to all our young people, my idea. We hope that the messages are Pastor Dr. Opoku Gyamfi, we'll be able to use it in our daily lives. Just one announcement on Sana, and I know we are running out of time, but just give me like 2 minutes and I'll be done. As youth and young adults for Northeast Zone, we do know that our youth camp is about 2 weeks away, maybe 2 weeks and a couple of days left at Yabeko. So this is what we have to know. For our youth leaders, we have about 1 or 2 meetings. We need to share some very, very important information with you. Once we share with you, please, we are asking for you to take it back to your young people because we'll be here. And we're requesting that every youth leader, if you haven't yet, please take our time, maybe a China or the week after, to meet with your young people. The information that we are going to share, which is the schedule for your youth camp, it's very important to say when youth are mobile camp, we share, discuss it. The do's and don'ts, the routines, the disciplines, the things that we have to do. Maybe I will say how to comport ourselves on campus, the activities, So to youth leaders, this is up to you, Ms. Sherman. Once you get the information from our meetings, and if you're not able to join the meetings, you can reach out to any of the other leaders to share with you. Now, so young people, we are really, really pleading with you, say meet with your people and sign on military campgrounds because information now is very, very crucial, critical, and they need it. Dress code, campus behavior, and all the other things and the goodies now we need to know. So, I say at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Daniel. Thank you also and your team, only Dr. Emmanuel, and then the rest of the people, putting this together. This is important. It's also admiring. So God bless you. So Dr. Dan, over to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for the wonderful announcement. Now, also not forgetting, we sending around this document for you guys to fill out with your health record information, just so that we have that down in case any emergency we are doing the health camp meeting now, be able to support you from the health department standpoint. And if it comes around, that's over to me. Fill out these forms for us. At this point, your best straight now, brother Kamali, about closing prayer number and after, so it's here your closing song as well. So, brother Kamali also. Yes, sir.
Please, I can pray.
Okay.
Yenija Wosru, Yadawa said for such a beautiful Sabbath evening. Udi Ninaya Babi Shim Hanum, the Babi Sion Wadia. For the past 3 days, nights, we've met here through Dr. Opoku Gyamfi. So we're said your person your body na with temple no. It's me follow guidelines. Na it's me dimu na asoweni na give it way for even the Holy Spirit to live within us. Eradi yedawase. Yedawase knowledge a odema doctor. Yedawase ahodia odema no. Yedawase so said the energy you gave us and as the interest that we had to come and to learn together. Thank you so much for the wayamaye through these presentations. So if there's something that I'm so when yes, sure say you forgive us. Yes, sure, mobile. Yeah, ba soon na baby, you're fully short, so no. Yes, sure say not by our strength, but yes, sure say no ever guide us. Near to me, make changes. Set for young Kasaya who see a bit live longer, now glorify Unyan Kupon with you. Yame Pauchina, we are going to go into our various local churches. We are asking that you be with us. Maya Sumina and Soreni. Mabibianya, dear, be acceptable to you. Ye free bonino, see ye free dear haunts in a home, not dear be piano, and ya dear Yankupon, Ubisha, so am I. So as we depart from each other, ye free when you know call. Yes, so say, boy, your home bang, ye free Luciano, ye quaco day, the source of guiding, may ye free home for me be now, dear Chino Yania, like I said, thank you for the gift of life. That was say, so it's here, and a G, and we used to deem me up on it's Amen.
Wow.
Amen.
Let's continue reading in verses